Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome and thank you all for joining us for our fourth Leadership Lunch and Learn webinar today. Today's conversation will feature Cheryl Stanley, the class of 2000, and David Pittard from the class of 2004. Please watch your email inbox later this afternoon for a short survey about the program. Your feedback is important to us, so please take 2 minutes to share your thoughts. And without further ado, I'd like to hand things over to our moderator for today's discussion, Julia Greenman, the class of 2003.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you for putting together this webinar. So big thank you to you and your teams. I'd like to welcome everyone to Wine and Leadership today. We're all very excited to be here. My name is Julia Greenman. I graduated from the hotel school in the class of 2003, and I'm currently Director of Restaurant Operations for Wynn and Encore Resorts here in Las Vegas. We also have two very exciting, unique panelists that are here with us today that I would like to introduce, Cheryl, obviously, and Dave. And I don't know if you want to take just a few minutes to tell us about your background and sort of how you ended up in a leadership role in the wine world. Maybe we'll start with Cheryl.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As Julia mentioned, my name is Cheryl Stanley. I am proud to be a member of the class of 2000 from the hotel school, and I recently came back to our alma mater to teach in the food and beverage department. I'm a lecturer here within the School of Hotel Administration, and I teach the Introduction to Wines course. I also teach a course called Beverage Management, which is an upper-level course for students who are really interested in getting into either operations or distribution. And it's wonderful to be with you today speaking about wine and leadership.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Welcome. Dave?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Pittard from the class of 2004. I'm pretty excited to be here today. My wife and I are the owners of Buttonwood Grove Winery on Cuba Lake, just about a half an hour north of our alma mater, Cornell. Really excited to be here and happy to talk about wine and leadership.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question, why is wine an important topic for leaders, especially for those not directly involved in the food and beverage industry? And what benefits can understanding wine bring to people in leadership positions?
Julie, I'll start with this one a little bit, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll start by saying my previous experience with wine was none. I worked for other companies previous to owning Buttonwood Grove. I worked in business-to-business sales and for a large retailer in Manhattan, and had the opportunity to take clients out for dinner, opportunity to be the person at the head of the table and order wines, and I didn't have any experience. So I often deferred to other people at the table and allowed them to make the purchase decisions. As I've learned more and had the opportunity to appreciate wine differently, I would say that there's important things about knowing wine are just some of the confidence that it would give you is important, some of the situational awareness, to be able to speak to wines or speak to customers about wines that they may be interested in. And certainly for most of the customers that are able to, or business relationships, the people that are able to purchase some of the more expensive wines that may be on restaurant wine lists, if they can afford to buy them and have the knowledge about those wines, that they hopefully would have the financial means to also participate with you in whatever business relationship you're asking for. I wanted to talk about some of my experience. Not knowing wines, like I said, I deferred to other people often, and I had an opportunity to travel to Tuscany with my wife. I got to learn and appreciate Tuscan wines, which I would then take my experience with those wines and use them in business, and would find myself often ordering the wines I was familiar with. It gave me that confidence. It allowed me to do those things. So I guess I would say that finding some things that you're confident in, that you have a knowledge about, and finding a way to get those experiences, whether it's through tastings at liquor stores, visiting different regions, that's certainly what I found to be beneficial.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cheryl.
And Dave, it was interesting from your experiences, when I was thinking about kind of wine and leadership, I was looking or describing it as, what do I see in a leader? What kind of qualities are good for leaders to have? And one is the ability to relate. And as Dave mentioned, knowing the product can assist you, and knowing wine can help you relate to whoever you're with, whether it's employees that you're celebrating the closure of a big business deal, whether it's with a client, and having also the ability to adapt to different situations. So knowing wine and being a leader, you can adapt to, if a guest doesn't want to drink at your table, what are you going to do? Are you going to order the magnum of wine and have lots of leftover or drink it all yourself? Or are you going to just order a glass, just one glass for yourself, or maybe even a half bottle? Being a leader to me is being confident in who you are. And being confident in who you are is meaning if you want to drink white Zinfandel, go ahead and drink white Zinfandel. And say if you want to drink California Cabernets, that's wonderful. But you also need to be gracious when you are a leader, when you're with others. And that means you might have to relinquish your white Zinfandel and go into an off-dry Riesling from, say, the Finger Lakes or from Germany, because then you can please other guests at your table, but then also make it enjoyable for you.
Thank you so much. And you kind of just tied into the next question. Do you have any suggestions for leaders in a business setting when selecting the wine? Perhaps you don't know your guest preferences and you're with a group of people that you've never met, or you're unsure of if they even drink. How do you handle those kinds of situations? What's your advice?
I think starting off the conversation of just politely asking, do any of you drink wine, and trying to find out their personal preferences. If they only drink certain brands like Rombauer Chardonnay in California, that's a big buttery style of Chardonnay. Okay, maybe you find, but then there's other people who only like to drink New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. You find kind of compromises. And there's good go-to wines for those cases. A slightly oaked Chardonnay is a good go-to wine. It can complement many dishes, so fish, poultry, or meats, but then it could also complement even some pork, maybe not strip steak, filet mignon style. And then also there's considered crossover wines too with reds. Rosés, Pinot Noirs, light tannin wines, maybe a Dolcetto or Barbera even from Italy, which can be quite nice. Sangiovese is, as Dave was mentioning, a Brunello or maybe a different type of wine there. So there's good middle-of-the-road wines, which you can find them in very different price points. So you don't, sometimes you might be put in the situation where you get to pick, but you're not necessarily paying, and you don't want to break the bank, but you want to make sure that you select a good wine. So you can find wines in this range, this crossover type of wine, in the $40 to $80 price point, which are, for most cases seen as socially acceptable prices to pay for wine on a wine list.
Thank you for touching on that. Dave, thoughts?
I guess I would just like to agree with Cheryl. I think that you have to be cognizant of the people you're eating with or sharing the meal with, and giving the opportunity to buy, the budget, the taste, and all those things. But don't forget that, we talk about customers all the time here at the winery. Wine is what you make it. And, there's a lot of books, and you can read from different people's thoughts and opinions, but it's an opportunity for you to share why you chose a wine with other people at the table, and they can learn something about you. And I would say that's equally as important to the wine you choose is take a minute. I chose this because, and you can share an experience you had, or you can share a thought you had, whatever it may be. Make it yours and use it as an opportunity to let the other people learn about you.
And that's a great way to foster conversation too. If you're in one of those awkward business meetings and conversation really hasn't started flowing yet, wine is a good introduction.
Great advice. Thank you so much. What are your thoughts on quality versus the perception of quality in the wine world currently?
Well, Julia, I think this is a difficult one to answer. Cheryl and I talked a little about this before. Kind of back to what I just said, I think it's up to each individual person. You can read things, you can look online, you can read reviews, and those are all important, and those can help you make decisions, but I think it's really up to you. I'll share just some thoughts or maybe some insight to things that we deal with here at the winery. We have wines that we submit for competitions often, or we submit for review. One of our wines in particular, we sent to a competition in California, received a double gold medal. We were very excited. We came back. Sales are doing wonderful. We submit the exact same wine to a competition here in New York, and it receives a bronze medal. So, and that's significantly different. There's considerable more competition in that same category in California, less competition in the competition here in New York. So, what does that really mean? Does the perception mean what the results of competitions are? I don't think so. I mean, those things are important to us. We keep submitting wines to competitions, even though we get different results from every wine we send them to. It's an opportunity for us to market our wine. And when things do go well, we can share that with customers. So we find value in the perception of wine. But and we believe that the quality does compare to those things. We just try to find ways to get people to believe it, to come visit us. The other thing when it comes to perception is that oftentimes I think people think price equals quality. And I'm sure Cheryl will probably talk about that a little bit more. So if you are at dinner and you are trying to impress somebody, you may make decisions based on price so that people believe that you are getting something of better quality. So I think back to situational awareness, price does definitely not equal quality, and oftentimes either does perception. It's often marketing and tools to get people like me to sell more wine.
Okay, fantastic. Cheryl, thoughts?
And Dave, you're so right, because certain brands have much more marketing dollars than other brands. So, they price themselves at a certain level. Maybe they work with different restaurateurs or different, I'm thinking nightlife clubs even, to get placed certain ways for that perception. But it's really what's in the bottle. And what's in the bottle is most important, because that's what you're going to be consuming. That's what you're going to be enjoying with others. And something, too, that I want to talk about is ratings. Many people talk about Wine Spectator, and we have alums who write for Wine Spectator, and they're awesome, and I agree with their palates. Their palates are in line with mine, and what I've done is I've actually tasted the ratings that they gave a wine, and I tasted it, and kind of on my own, I figured out, okay, do they like fuller bodied wine, lesser bodied wines? But no, they're actually equal with mine. But there are some reviewers out there that I know through tasting that my palate does not agree with. What they rate 100, I would probably rate an 88 or 90. And so finding your own self, again, going back to the being confident in who you are and what you enjoy drinking as a consumer, can help you agree or disagree with ratings, and also kind of comb through the mess that is associated with a wine, because once a wine gets a very good review, it can move a lot of product. You can see it, retailers, even restaurateurs might advertise it, just scored 98 points with so-and-so, or, 9 out of 10 stars with another person. And this here, it might actually not mean anything, but some operators will charge more for those wines because of that point score. One thing also I want to talk about is there are regions in the world that have certain perceptions of very high quality. Yesterday I was just teaching on Bordeaux, and we talk about the 1855 classification of Bordeaux, which hasn't changed, has changed twice since 1855. But that was all based off of quantity of wine produced and sales price in 1855, which is a lot different than what we're dealing with now. And, if you're classified a first growth, you are perceived as being the best wine, but there are fifth growth wines that I think can be as good, or in some vintages, maybe slightly even better than a first growth wine. And so knowing how classifications work, too, can be to your benefit of finding that really high quality, but not necessarily paying the price on it, and knowing laws. As the European Union is or since 2009, when the European Union changed their laws, going from a vin de pays, like a country wine, to an IGP wine, Indication Géographique Protégée, protected geographic place of indication. You can find these outstanding wines from top producers that are not from a traditional AOC, because maybe they want to blend some Syrah in with their Cabernet, or maybe they want to, not age it as long, or slightly change their yields, and they don't fit the laws of the region, and so they have to declassify. And that too is just having that knowledge, constantly learning about the products in the market can really be very beneficial for you.
Fantastic. Great answers. Thank you so much. The next question sort of has multiple parts to it. How does one become an industry leader in the wine world? And how do you impact change on an industry with so much history? Dave, this one might be interesting for you to answer. What tactics are important for maintaining market leadership in the wine industry?
I guess I can start by saying I am definitely not a leader in the industry. This is all very...
You will be.
This is all very new to me. It's a fascinating industry, if you ask me. There's so many different things happening in so many different places around the world. I guess my perception so far in the time that my wife and I have been here is that much like any other industry, I think it often has to do with what risks you're willing to take, what ideas you have, and how you differentiate and separate yourself from other people around you and around the world. I can tell you here at Buttonwood, we're trying some new things. We're looking for ways to be different. This year we're producing a traditional German-style production Riesling, which I'm sure is done other places here in the Finger Lakes, but not widely. It's not typical for what you see here in the Finger Lakes. We're using natural barrel aging for a Riesling. We're going back to try to pay respect to the history for the people, for where this product really became well known in Germany. And it's a style of wine that my wife and our winemaker and I happen to like, so it's something we're gonna go back and try to do. We hope it'll separate us a little bit from the other people around us, give us an opportunity to sell a product, be different, and certainly take a risk. So I think, like anything else, someday if we want to become an industry leader, we have to find what's going to be our focus here at Buttonwood, and we're working on it with some products like this, taking risks, taking chances, and see where that takes us.
All right. Cheryl, how do you, as an educator of the next generation of hospitality leadership, how do you inspire and encourage people to educate themselves about wine?
Igniting their passion. To me, it's all about igniting their passion about this very interesting subject matter that can be used in all aspects of life. I talk day one in class that knowing wine is a life skill. And that's why it's so exciting to do this seminar, because even knowing the difference between a certain, two different grape varietals can give you an edge in a business situation. And so to me, it boils down with passion, getting them excited, getting them confident. So when they're given the wine list, or when they go to, I always use Northside as an example, because Northside is such a huge store, and it can be very overwhelming. And so finding confidence in your knowledge and in what you like to drink can really help. And it's, this industry is changing. This industry is changing rapidly. When I took beverage management and when I was a TA for wines, when I was an undergrad, to what it's like now is a whole different kind of, I would say almost mess, but exciting kind of activity with the craft scene, small artisanal wines, a lot of consolidation in product too. So the big guys are getting bigger, and some of the small guys are even doing just a couple hundred cases. And we see this, and there's so much product out there. How can you weed through it to figure out what you actually like to drink? So that's what I try and help weed through that, help people understand what they're drinking, why they're drinking the way that they are, and so kind of a little bit about the winemaking aspect, where the grapes come from, so that they can also apply it to other parts maybe that they didn't, other regions of the world that we haven't tried before that might be similar to someplace else.
Fantastic. Thank you for your thoughts on that. I told you both I might try to sneak this question in. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to see if I could add a little bit more there, if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay. I just also wanted to say, I guess, from my perspective, one of the questions about education was how do people educate themselves in the wine world. I guess I would just point out that Cornell University has been a tremendous asset to me, being new into this. So the extension programs, the programs they offer, the people that want to get into the wine world, that's a great place to start. And they offer all kinds of summer programs. They offer different classes to take and teach and learn. For people that are interested in learning about wine as a consumer, I guess I would also recommend, if you can take opportunities to visit different wine regions, to go into tasting rooms and try different wines. It's something my wife and I are trying to do each and every year, and it's just been a tremendous education, one that I don't know that I could get in a classroom, just to see and understand the different terroir and understand how that impacts the flavors of the wine. Getting out and visiting wineries is a great thing to do.
And actually, Dave, I call it palate mileage. So it's constantly tasting, and as more and more retailers realize that having wine tastings, even here in Ithaca, Red Feet has a wine tasting for consumers on one night. Cellar Door has a wine tasting on another night, and they're free. They're free to consumers because they've realized that if you get the product into the hands or into the mouth of the consumer, they're more likely to buy it, because you can be able to share that story. And as the millennials are becoming a major purchasing power, they want to know the story about it.
Yeah, Cheryl, that's a good point. To your point exactly, my wife and I are going to Cellar Door tonight on your recommendation, actually. And we're going to... Beaujolais. So we're going to go to this liquor store, this store in Ithaca, simply to taste a new wine, a type of wine that we've never tasted before. It became available today, and it's only available for a couple months. So just different ways to learn. It's a fun way to learn. We'll go down there, taste wine, buy a couple bottles, and have a nice night.
That's great advice. Do you have any other resources that you use to stay educated in wine? Is there any media? You mentioned Wine Spectator. Are there any other resources that you'd recommend to the group on keeping current?
There's some great websites, actually, and one of the websites that I use just came out with a book. It's called winefolly.com, Wine Folly, and that website is amazing. They have incredible maps, excellent photos. Their information is short and to the point, and you don't have to read through all of that stuff. It's outstanding, and I'm actually... I just put their book as one of my supplemental textbooks in my beverage management class, because they break it down by varietal, and then they also break it down in that varietal, old world versus new world. So a place in the world that has been producing wine for more than 400 years, and then, the new world, a place that's been making wine commercially for less than 400 years.
Thank you. We had a question come through from one of the attendees. Jennifer Simon asks, I was wondering if you have any recommendations on how to bring wine into a professional setting for people not necessarily working in the wine industry. Are there any interesting activities you have seen done to bring wine education to a professional team or group besides just a tasting?
I'm sorry, I missed part of that.
Oh, okay. I'll read it again. No worries. So I was wondering if you have any recommendations on how to bring wine into a professional setting for people not in the industry. Are there any interesting activities you've seen done to bring wine education to a professional group aside from just a tasting?
So most common, of course, would be a tasting. There's something that I actually did for the Johnson Graduate School of Management last semester, and I've done it locally for Chambers of Commerce, which is called Wines for Business. So specifically focusing on wine that you order, kind of what we're talking about today. But it was more of an educational seminar. In the professional setting, it depends how casual you want to be in the professional setting. I mean, having everyone bring a bottle to, say, a staff meeting or an extracurricular party and sharing about why they brought that meeting, it could help in presentation skills because they would have to present the wine and talk about why they selected it, maybe a little bit about the grape varietals or where the wine is from. To kind of get, again, conversation flowing. But traditionally would be a tasting in a kind of a seminar fashion.
It's hard to talk about wine without tasting wine, in my opinion. But you know what? I think those, you've seen the kits with the scents, and having everyone discuss those and use descriptors. That's a fun activity. Dave, do you have anything that sort of jumps out at you?
Unfortunately, I would say tasting. I mean, I can share that we have, this year we had multiple companies come on site and stay in our cabins for an extended period of time and do tastings throughout the Finger Lakes. It was a retreat for the company to just get away and they use wine as a tool for bonding and team building. Other than that, I'll defer to Cheryl.
Well, and actually, Dave, thank you for bringing that up, that you have companies come to your winery, because there are I know of some wineries in California that actually do blending events. And there are some city wineries, too, where they're kind of a wine bar / winemaking facility. They, too, do blending events, and it's, again, that team building scenario where the different members of the company come in. You might blend, you have a competition, or each individual person blends their own wines.
Absolutely. I think it's fun also to do blind tastings. If the team has a little more knowledge, that could be fun to do a blind and get everybody engaged, and that could be a fun thing. Jennifer had another question. Jennifer Simon, thank you for participating, and I think this is an interesting one. How have online wine sellers changed, for better or worse, the wine business?
So being a former retailer, online wine sales has made retail prices much more competitive, and has given advantage to the large retailers that can buy in, say, pallet drops or 25 cases, and very small retailers a challenge with only allowing, because of financial reasons, they can only bring in maybe 1 to 3 cases, and they won't necessarily get a price drop for multiple cases. So it's very interesting with each state having different laws and wine shipping laws, which are constantly changing. That too has, some states you're not allowed to receive wine and from outside, other states you are. It can be, I don't know, that's challenging if you really want a wine and you can't get it. But really pricing, it has revolutionized pricing, but also large box stores, depending on where you are, like Costco, has also changed how wine retailers have to price. If they are priced near a Costco has such a low markup that they can't be competitive. So in my situation, I just chose not to have any of the wines that Costco had, because I just couldn't supply with their markup or compete with their markup. And I could talk on and on about this, but
Please do.
Well, so in New York State, Wegmans is opening up a lot of retail stores, and the law in New York State, you're not allowed to have more than one license for each person, and that's it's changing the retail scene in the U.S. or in the state of New York. So it's going to be interesting to see over time, as more and more of these liquor stores grow, what's going to happen to the small mom and pop places. Are they going to be able to compete?
It's a great question. Dave, what do you think? Is your wine available online?
Our wine is available online only through our website, and we only ship to 3 states. So the changes that you're discussing are really prior to my arrival in this industry. And quite honestly, at this point in time, we are mainly a direct-to-retail establishment. So it is not, I mean, I'm sure it impacts our business, but it's not a large part of our business at this time.
And actually, Dave, that brings up a really interesting point. It's kind of like going to a farmer's market. So if you are interested in buying a wine from a small operator, and they ship online, and it's a good time of year to ship, because you shouldn't ship when it's too warm or too hot, too warm or too cold, because the wine can be damaged in transit with the temperature, that, you know, you're able to, they're not going through a third-party distributor, so their markup is going to themselves.
Absolutely. I'm going to sneak my question about globalization in here, because I just have to ask it, and I'm so interested in your response. You know, what are your thoughts on globalization and emerging markets like China and their impact on the wine industry? What do you think the future brings in terms of globalization?
I think China is going to be a huge player is going to be a huge player. They're at kind of a stopping point now, or I should say holding pattern, because of the push against corruption. And so you used to see some of these perceived very, very high-quality wines, i.e. First Growth Bordeaux, being shipped and being sold at very, very expensive prices in China. And then when the government kind of constricted on that, these wines needed to find another home, and they were looking, you know, the Bordelais producers were looking at other regions of the world to try and sell these wines, but because they could sell them so high in China, you know, other places in the world are like, sorry, we can't pay those kind of prices. So they're really having to look to reevaluate their own pricing structure in Bordeaux to see what is, you know, what markets are going to be good for them. And we see this with the cognac, you know, with spirits industry as well. The Chinese as consumers in that growing middle class, when I was over in Shanghai this summer, there's a lot of wine there. There is some wine that is kept properly, some wine that is not kept properly, and education is going to be huge. They are going to buy and drink a lot of wine from all over the world. So, you know, knowing their consumption pattern, their consumption style, what types of wines that they like can be huge. And what countries can get in there, or what regions of the world can get in there. Because right now you have a lot of Australia, France, and New Zealand. But if the U.S. can get into that market, that would be great for some parts of the U.S. Oh, and also they drink it differently. And that's something, too, is if you are dealing, we're going to take it back to the U.S., if you are dealing with Chinese clients and you order a big full-bodied tannic Cabernet Sauvignon, don't be offended if they serve it on ice or add ice to it and add Coca-Cola, because that's how they are. That's how some of those consumers drink their big tannic full-bodied reds, and that's how we started in the U.S. We started by drinking sweet wines.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dave. Thoughts?
I guess I could just share that, you know, it's not something that we participated in those markets, but I can tell you that New York growers, the New York Wine and Grape Foundation has really helped to try to open some of those markets for us. Again, we don't personally participate, but other wineries in the region do. A friend of mine is exporting wine to China for groups of Finger Lakes wineries. So I know that the market is opening. They're saying it's a wonderful thing, but I hope the opportunity continues to grow. You know, certainly we want to grow, and those are areas that would be wonderful to sell wine. As Cheryl mentioned, the prices that they're able to command make it well worth the challenges of getting it there.
You mentioned go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, no, something we do have to think about too, just in all markets, the U.S. and abroad, is counterfeit wines as well. And that was something. There was a great article in the Wine Spectator about counterfeit wines.
And Dave, you'd mentioned in a previous discussion the Finger Lakes Alliance, the Finger Lakes Wine Alliance. What is that organization?
Finger Lakes Wine Alliance is a group of wineries in the Finger Lakes that are getting together to try to promote the Finger Lakes wines in different areas. So it's made a pretty large impact in the New York City market. I know there are, from what I understand, there are plans and hopes to try to expand that to other markets. It's a group marketing effort to try to promote the growth and the quality of the wines that are coming out of the Finger Lakes.
Okay.
At this time. It's a really nice group, something we're hoping to be a larger part of.
So what is hot in the Finger Lakes right now, vintage-wise, varietal-wise? What's next?
Sure. I mean, just kind of on a basic level, the Finger Lakes has been well, or best probably known for our Riesling, which continues to be exciting and change, and there are people doing different things with Rieslings. I mentioned that we're going to do a barrel fermented. There are other things going on. I think there's been a larger movement in the Finger Lakes that people are having more success. The wine writers are recognizing it more. Finger Lakes was named Wine Region of the Year this year. People are coming. So I think the winemakers and the winery owners are a little more willing to take a chance to do some things that they maybe haven't in the past. I've seen a slow but steady switch of people drinking sweet wines to more of a focus on the traditional vinifera, drier wines. Some of the things that I'm hearing about from other producers are some skin fermented white wines that are coming out. Back to taking a risk. I think people are starting to have some fun and do some interesting different things. Again, ways to promote different Finger Lakes opportunities. There's a local movement that Cheryl mentioned before. I think the Finger Lakes has been a really nice beneficiary of that movement. People are willing to try and give the less known regions an opportunity to show what they have. And I'm pretty excited about what you see from other growers in the Finger Lakes. Cabernet Franc has really made a nice push for the Finger Lakes. I encourage people to try some Finger Lakes Cabernet Francs if they haven't. Some Pinot Noirs out of the Finger Lakes are coming out that are really, really nice. There's been a focus on single vineyard wines. Pet Natural sparkling wines. It's kind of this movement to stay more local, but also try some of these things like the craft beer world, where we're small enough and we can take chances to do some new and interesting things and hopefully bring more awareness to the Finger Lakes. Specific vintages, personally, I think the 2012 for the red wines right now that's out is really, really nice. Unfortunately, in the Finger Lakes, oftentimes our red wines move quite quickly, and they were quick to get them to market and quick to get off the shelves. So I know, for example, for us, we've already sold out of our 2012 Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon. But if you can find them, those are wonderful, wonderful. The Cab Franc in particular from 2012 in the Finger Lakes is an enjoyable wine.
Thank you so much. Cheryl, thoughts on trends and what's next in the wine world?
Sure. Well, I actually want to kind of piggyback off of what Dave was saying about what's going on in the Finger Lakes. I mean, coming back to the Finger Lakes, having lived in California, it's so exciting. It's kind of the Wild West here. And I moved to Santa Barbara right after Sideways, so I lived through that whole movement there. But being here, there's so much passion, and there's this new generation of winemakers like Dave and Megan Frank over at Constantine Frank, and just Fred Merwarth and Oscar Binke over at Herman J. Weimer. So this is this new, and Ryan William as well on the east side of Finger Lakes, this young generation bringing a worldly knowledge about wine. You know, they've tasted wines from around the world, and they're seeing how these wines can fit on a wine list, can fit on the shelf in a retail store, and what makes them different and special. And, you know, I love talking about clonal selections of Pinot Noirs, and you can speak to the winemakers here, and they know what clones they have of Pinot Noir, and they celebrate that. And that's something, too, that you talk about in wine regions in California. Chris Bates, who's class of 2002, Master Sommelier. He has Element Winery, and he even has a very small plot of Syrah that he's doing. So it's just this knowledge and worldly palette that's been brought back to the region that's, to me, really exciting. Other wine trends, wine in kegs. It's not just for beer anymore, it's for wine as well. And this is good for restaurateurs because you can pour a wine on tap, on draft. And it's not going to go bad because you'll have the systems in place to prevent it from being exposed to air. And they can come, there's a producer down in the Hudson Valley who's actually doing a sparkling wine. It's through forced carbonation, but she's doing a sparkling wine on draft. There's red wines, white wines, rosé wines. These are fun. Wine in a box. You know, wine in a box has a very bad connotation with Franzia and some of the other bag-in-the-box ones that you might remember drinking when you were an undergrad here at Cornell. But nowadays, I mean, there's even Bordeaux producers that are doing bag-in-a-box. One that I'm thinking of is even in a wooden wine box, and it comes with a reusable ice pack bag that you can serve at parties. And it's a very high-quality wine. It's less money for them to ship it because it weighs less, and therefore it can go to market at a cheaper price as well. So, again, having this knowledge, the Maipei Malbec is another one. I used to pour this wine by the glass. I love it. It's an easy-drinking, everyday style of wine, but it's served in a box. And so I can slowly drink it over a period of several weeks, leave it on my counter, and not have to worry about it. So there's, you can find good wines in a box. And there's, one more thing, wine in a can.
I was going to mention the can. I've seen it.
Go to the beach and bring your own glass of wine. Underwood really started that out of Oregon, but it's off the charts. Retail stores cannot keep it in stock. You pick up a 6-pack of wine instead of a 6-pack of beer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Organic, vegan wine. Thoughts on that? I know a lot of students you'd mentioned had been asking about that, and I thought you could share some insight into that market.
Sure. Organic wines, there's making a wine organically or there's growing the grapes organically, so you have to be able to differentiate on the label. If it's grown with organic grapes, they'll say on the label, grown with organic grapes, if that's part of their marketing structure. There's also the trend to farming biodynamically. And I can let Dave talk more about the farming aspect of it. But yes, students want to know about the wine. They want to know everything. So if it's vegan, because, do they fine with egg whites? Or do they fine with other methods? And now more producers are realizing that the market has these questions. I should say the market didn't even really know that wines could potentially not be vegan. And putting it on the label, kind of educating the consumer with more information is what a lot of wineries are doing. Dave, could you talk a little bit more about the farming?
Sure. I can just share that, in the Finger Lakes, we don't have some of the certification or classification processes that are in other wine regions, but it's been asked for quite a bit. Talking with other growers and other producers in the area, I know it's something that we are hoping to work on, we're hoping to have in place. People ask often about, are we eco-friendly? We are right on the lake, so how do what we do affect the lake? And I think from a education and marketing standpoint, having some of these guidelines in place that we could say to people or put on our wine labels that, this is the process that went through in the vineyard, went through in the winery, would help answer a lot of questions and educate our customers, because there are a lot of choices we make every day in the vineyard. Are we using organic material? Are we using chemicals? What are we going to do to our vineyard? To grow grapes here in the Finger Lakes is a pretty difficult challenge compared to other regions in the United States. We are fighting mildews constantly that when I talk to growers in Washington and other places, they face a challenge once or twice a year. We're trying to combat those things sometimes on a weekly basis during the growing season. So for us to be able to educate customers on the challenges and then the safe ways that we are using to combat those things and still put out a quality product would be a very nice thing. So we're looking forward to that growth and that change in our region in the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Do either of you know, is blood actually still used as a fining agent? Not really, right? I'm curious. Maybe some old world producer somewhere is actually still doing that. Cheryl?
You know, someone somewhere in the world of wine is using it, and that's why I say there's always exceptions. I mean, I can say this is how it's made, asterisk exception. There is someone else doing it differently, and that's one of the things that makes wine so fun is, yeah, you can generalize, but you'll find it differently.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This question coming from myself, actually, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on this. Restaurants and the restaurant world is notorious for sort of what consumers, see as horrendous markups and things like that. What suggestions do you guys have for navigating a wine list? What do you feel is a fair markup for a restaurant? I think as consumers are more educated with, wine literature and buying wines online and buying wines from retail and going to wineries, they know what sort of is being charged from the producer level. What do you suggest to people sitting down? There's a wine list, pricing, what's fair? How do they work their way through that?
So Dave, if it's okay, I'll start off on this one. Really, it's going back to finding some of those lesser-known regions where the sommelier or wine director might put the wine on the wine list because they like it, because they think it's a really great wine, and because it's lesser known, they don't want it to sit there, so they're going to price it, they're going to put it at a lower markup. But the big name, high scoring, really well-known regions that they know they can get top dollar for, yes, they're going to mark that up accordingly. They could even push it up even higher. And in some, I used to manage a restaurant that was a Grand Award-winning wine list. I had wines on my list I purposely did not want to sell. And I would price them $7,000 a bottle. If you want to pay $7,000 a bottle for my wine, great, I'll take it. But I purposely didn't want it to sell. So again, it's knowing what you like to drink, and trying maybe a region you haven't had before, or a smaller unknown producer that doesn't have the brand recognition. And something else, don't be afraid to ask. Even though, Wine Spectator came out with a survey back in 2008, I know it was a long time ago, saying that one of the pet peeves of restaurant goers was that the staff wasn't knowledgeable. That has really changed. More and more restaurants are hiring beverage directors, have sommeliers or wine captains on the floor, and they're there to move the product. So you must be firm in what you want. Don't let them drive the boat. You want to say, this is what I like to drink. What do you have that's similar to that on the wine list? Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thought was exactly what Cheryl just said. I think don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to ask not just the waiter or waitress. I think if there's a restaurant with a sommelier or a restaurant manager, oftentimes I find that they're pretty excited to talk to you about something that they have is new, and a lot of times something that's new is priced a little bit more, a little less priced probably, I should say, versus some of the better known things. And it's a great opportunity and chance to try a different wine you haven't tried before. Restaurants that carry our wine as a new product do that, and you slowly, steadily see as the product has sold better, the price has changed over time to where they're comfortable and they know they have a market for it. But when they don't, they're offering it at a better price to try to build that market.
Yeah, and what tip I can give everyone, and thank you for suggesting them to talk to the manager, talk to the som. If you point to a wine and you're pointing to the price, that's sort of code speak for, this is my range. I'm talking to the sommelier, this is sort of what I'm looking for, and that clues in wine professional to know where to guide you, especially if you're with a business group. They'll stick within that number range. So just another tip for the group.
Yeah, there are some websites and apps. I don't know. I don't use them, so I maybe shouldn't bring it up. But I believe there are some websites and apps that I've heard about from customers that use these, and they find them very helpful if you are at a restaurant that either you're not able to get someone to help you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What is on your list, both of you, for the holidays? What are you drinking?
All right.
Who wants to start?
I'll start, I guess. Okay. I guess I'll share for Thanksgiving. I am going to my sister-in-law's house in Chicago, and I think we will be bringing a rosé. We have a dry rosé that we make, so most likely that's the one we'll bring. But a rosé seems to be something that I'm finding most people can enjoy. My family likes the drier wine, so we'll choose a drier rosé. But it really can go nicely with a Thanksgiving dinner. It's got a real nice balance of the acids and the sugars, and it'd be a nice light drinking, great tasting wine to go with a big Thanksgiving dinner. So Thanksgiving I will do that. For Christmas, I'm going to ask for a wine for Christmas. Going back to my trip to Tuscany that I mentioned before, my family, we have a gift-giving exchange where there's a certain limit, and you can kind of ask for whatever you want, and the Secret Santa who gets you is kind of expected to deliver on that. So I am going to be asking for a 2010 Brunello di Montalcino, something that I really enjoy to drink, something that I probably won't go out and buy for myself because of the price point, but something that I'll put in my wine cellar for a few years and enjoy. And that kind of leads into exactly what I would recommend or suggest for New Year's or a holiday time around that's when, I go into the wine cellar and pick out something that's kind of been buried in there for a while that I was saving for a special time. And I think, I encourage people to do that. Put some wines away that are good now, you can afford to buy now, and put them away and take them out and enjoy them. So, for New Year's, I'm going to find something very special in my basement that I forgot is down there.
Okay, fantastic. Cheryl, how about you?
So it's interesting, because my husband teaches beer and spirits and mixology, we always have fun, interesting conversations about beverages around the holidays. And so speaking with him about Thanksgiving, he's going to bring in some wine or some beers. And I don't know which ones because it's always a surprise. And then my go-tos for Thanksgiving are usually actually Beaujolais Nouveau, or a Cru Beaujolais. Cru Beaujolais being from one of the 10 approved villages. I tend to go with Saint-Amour, Fleury, or Morgon, specifically of those 3 crus out of the 10. And the reason why is because I like the Gamay grape as it shows so much kind of that juicy cranberryness to it, and it complements the cranberry sauce on the table. It's got a lot of fruit forward, so when we do the yams and everything, but the tannin's not going to be overpowering for the green beans that we have, and the body is, the acid is high to cleanse through the fat of the cream and the mashed potatoes and butter, but it's still delicate enough for the turkey. And then for a white wine, because my mother's flying in from California today, she only drinks sweet wines, so I bought her a Lupiac from Bordeaux. It's a Botrytis-sized dessert wine. And then we're also going to have an off-dry German Riesling or Finger Lakes Riesling, depending on what I can get to before next week. For Christmas, it's just going to be my husband and I, and we're probably going to open up an old bottle of Santa Barbara County Syrah, looking at the Tinsley, probably 2006, 2007 vintage from Colson Canyon is one that I had in mind, because it's just fun. We like to reminisce about when we lived there. And then for New Year's, rosé bubbles. I love pink bubbles. And we'll do probably not champagne, but because I always like to find fun and interesting rosé bubbles from other parts of the world, So I'm actually thinking of Rosé Cava this year.
Sounds wonderful. Wish I was invited. Go-to gifts, weddings, birthdays, any thoughts or suggestions on what you like to give for special occasions to friends and family?
I love to give wines with meaning. So if the wine has a special meaning to me, I love to share it with friends and family. When my friends get married, I give them usually 3 bottles of wine, one to enjoy on their first anniversary, one to enjoy later on either their 3rd or 5th anniversary, and then a wine to be enjoyed, 5 years plus. So this way, and then I write tasting notes about it and kind of why I selected the wines but that's kind of much more complex, and that represents me and my relationship with my friends. For just good go-to gifts, Prosecco, sparkling wine, everyone loves to celebrate, and sparkling wines have that connotation of celebration. So live life to the fullest every day and drink sparkling wines. And you can find them for $10, a good bottle of Prosecco, or like the La Marca I'm thinking about is one that I serve in the big class. You could do Cava for, $10 to $14. You could do a Cremant de Loire for $18, or of course Champagne, which would cost you, $35 plus. So there's so many different options out there. In the Finger Lakes, amazing sparkling wines done in the traditional method. So what many of you formerly memorized in wines as the method champenoise, but the traditional method, secondary fermentation occurring in this physical bottle that you're buying, and it's done in the with the traditional varietals as well. And rosés are always good. Something too that I've started is birth year wines. So if someone special has a baby, and you can give them a certificate for a wine in the future, or once that vintage has been released, you buy the gift and then you give it to the parent.
Okay,
something fun.
Dave, what do you do?
Well, selfishly, I give mostly wines from my vineyard. Obviously, that's a way for me to have other people experience, the excitement that my wife and I have for what we're doing here. So that's really not a good answer to help anyone else. However, that's what I do. It's just a nice way for us to share with other people what we're doing here. But Cheryl probably touched on before I was here, my certain go-to gift was the Prosecco. Again, really inexpensive. Multiple bottles could be purchased for a bigger, if people really want to have a good time, and you don't break the bank. And, I find Prosecco to just be a wonderful, wonderful tasting wine, and at a price point, because of the region, price point that's much more competitive than some of the other areas. So I think it's a great one to give too.
Okay. Speaking of sparkling wine, the coupe glass, trend, here to stay. Does it affect the way the sparkling wine, what are your thoughts on the coupe glass? Cheryl, you're nodding. Do you have strong feelings on this one?
It is meant for cocktails, not for sparkling wine.
Okay, I wondered if that's the way you were going to go with it.
Cocktails.
Okay.
Because you're allowing the carbon dioxide to escape. So it's, your wine's going flatter, faster. So you want, and I personally like to drink higher end sparkling wines actually out of just a basic white wine glass. And not use a champagne flute, but the coupes, no. Use it for, do a daiquiri. Do a dry daiquiri, that's fine, but not for sparkling wine.
Or perhaps a champagne fountain. For those of you that aren't familiar, the coupe glass is the champagne fountain glass from the cruise ship times. Dave, thoughts on the coupe glass?
I don't have any thoughts on it.
I think it's cool looking. It's kind of a hipster thing. We obviously have 2 minutes left, so I just wanted to ask our panelists if you have any, final thoughts on wine and leadership that you wanted to share with the team, anything we didn't cover that you wanted to mention to the group.
Dave, do you want to start?
I don't think so. I had a couple of things written down that I thought would be interesting to talk about, but we've pretty much covered those. So I guess thank you to anybody who listens to us. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. Thank you.
Okay. Cheryl,
And I also want to say thank you very much. My big thing, go out and discover your palate. Get that palate mileage, find what you like. If it's inexpensive, great. Celebrate that you like inexpensive wine. If it's expensive wine, I'm sorry for your bank account, but hopefully you have the disposable income to enjoy it. So enjoy the holidays, and thank you very much for attending our webinar today.
And thank you so much to both of you, and then again, Amanda and team. If anyone makes it out to Las Vegas, I am here, and I would love to see you, so stop in and say hello. Just, excited that we're talking about wine and excited that it's in the forefront of everybody's mind. So thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And if anyone is in San Francisco or New York City this evening at 7 p.m., there will be receptions at Ardizia in New York City, 510 West 52nd Street, and the Press Club in San Francisco, 20 Yerba Buena Lane. So if anybody is in those cities, please join other attendees for some networking events. And thank you, Julia, Cheryl, and David, once again.
Thank you.
I love Brooke. Suddenly very thirsty. That's great.
Julia,
Kind of funny and entertaining as we followed along here. So it was great to see a lot
Julia,
of familiar faces on the chat.
you never answered why nobody ever wins at the Wynn.
I know. I kind of ran out of time. If anyone's still on the webinar, it's a business model. The casino industry has a business model that isn't, obviously we're here to make money, so thank you for playing. A lot of people do win, though, and I think we should focus on the individuals who do hit the jackpots, and they do the victims themselves. They're out there, may not get a lot of publicity, but it's possible. You can win. Statistically, though, you probably won't. But we have great restaurants here, so come try those. Don't worry so much about the gaming, and we're here for that. So thank you.